we just saw Warner Brothers' next big bomb dropped in theaters, and already we're seeing the interesting spin and the excuses for why it failed. So right now, this article from The Hollywood Reporter has the headline, Box Office, Blue Beetle beats Barbie with 25.4 million debut. So yeah, they're trying to say like it beat Barbie, like insinuating that it's doing good, where it's like, yeah, Barbie's been in theaters for over a month. I mean, of course it wasn't going to hold on to the #1 spot already. I mean, and Blue Beetle really doesn't have a whole lot of competition to work with right now, or to contend with right now. So of course it's going to be the #1 spot, but that's not saying much because it spent a lot of money, and 25.4 million is not a big return for the opening weekend. So jumping down into the article, it says Blue Beetle opened to an estimated 25.4 million in North America. It remains to be seen how much Tropical Storm Hillary dampens grosses in Los Angeles, the film's top market, and other parts of the Southwest, but Warner Brothers expects the impact to be significant. So yeah, happened to have this happen at a time when there's a tropical storm going into the Southwest and Los Angeles, and like obviously this was catering to a Latino market, and that's where a big Latino population is in the country. So yeah, you have that. I mean, I'm still curious about the overseas market, what it's gonna do, especially in Latino countries. But one thing I saw, at least the impression I got from this movie, is they're saying it's about catering to a Latino demographic, but at the same time, is it a Latino demographic that lives in the US or just one in general? Because that's a completely different thing. A person of Mexican origin who is born and raised in Los Angeles is going to be different than a person of Mexican origin who was born and raised in Mexico City. I mean, they have completely different lives. I mean, they're not really even the same group. I mean, they have some same cultural traditions and other things like that, speak the same language, but I mean, it's a different group right there. So I don't know what they're actually trying to do with this. I mean, I'm not Latino, obviously, so I can't speak for how representative this is of the culture, so I don't know. That's what I'm thinking. But in either way, I mean, that isn't a good sign for them. And I saw this tweet from Discussing Films earlier, just talking about the different box office gross for these opening weekends for DCEU movies. And as you can see at the bottom here, Blue Beetle is 25.4 million. It has that. These are the last 5 ones that were released in, or last 4 that were released in theaters, and Blue Beetle is by far the worst one. What's interesting though is it was actually slightly lower than the Suicide Squad, the James Gunn one, but it was better than Wonder Woman 84. But you got to keep in mind, both Wonder Woman 84 and the Suicide Squad were both simultaneously released on Max and on theaters. And this was also during the pandemic, when a lot of theaters weren't open to full capacity, and a lot of people weren't wanting to go to theaters and stuff like that. So I mean, that could also account for why these are so, well, I mean, actually that is a big reason why these are so low. But before the pandemic, you had Birds of Prey, which even did better than Blue Beetle. But it's still strange though that how this movie is even worse than the other worst movie that they had this year, which was Shazam, which was the first big movie that they had coming out, or one of the first big ones that came out after theaters like fully opened up, and that did terrible. I mean, and you can even see like the audience score wasn't bad for this, and it was the same. The audience score for Blue Beetle was actually pretty good. So I think the studio is hoping that, like, well, with good word of mouth, then maybe that can propel it, even if it's a weak opening weekend. But like, as we saw with Shazam, that really didn't help. And it only brought in $133 million globally on a $120 million budget. So this is a movie that probably needs to make $400 to $500 million. And I'm talking about Blue Beetle needs to make $400 to $500 million in order to kind of break even. And even then, we've seen that that's not the case with it. So, I mean, if it's looking like right now it's tracking to do worse than Shazam Fury of the Gods, so that's just another huge blow for them. Fortunately for Warner Brothers, they had Barbie too, so at least that's going to help offset the losses of some of their superhero movies. I mean, including The Flash, which is one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. But right now they have to be really examining Aquaman and thinking, like, what are they going to do with that? Because right now, not only is it pretty much been said that Jason Momoa is not going to be returning for the character, so basically Aquaman is done in DC, and it's also going to basically be completely rebooted once James Gunn's universe takes over. So a lot of people are probably wondering, like, why should I go see Aquaman? I mean, we've had the director of the movie kind of come out and say, like, well, the first movie was kind of a standalone one, so people should go see this. And maybe that is the case. Maybe that is enough. Like, Jason Momoa is more of a likable actor, and people like the character of Aquaman, or at least his portrayal of Aquaman, fairly well. So maybe that will be enough to bring people into theaters. But I'm not convinced it'll happen. I mean, I think people don't go to theaters right now like habitually like they used to. I mean, that's what they did with the first Aquaman. They just kind of went and saw it in theaters because it was the newest superhero movie. But nowadays, audiences are a bit more selective about what they want to go see in theaters. I mean, right now, I mean, theaters and going to movies is kind of a luxury, and we have an economy right now that's doing pretty bad, and people are pinching pennies. I mean, so they're going to be more restrictive on what they go see. So I think Aquaman is another one of those movies that's just kind of dead in the water, and there's really nothing Warner Brothers can do except maybe try to mitigate their losses. I think what we're going to go see when it's leading up to this movie is just kind of a diminished marketing push for it, because I mean, we're going to have a marketing push because they kind of have to, but they're just going to have like more of a half-hearted one. And if they're going to do that, or I mean, because I can't imagine them just dumping it onto their streaming platform, but I don't know, stranger things have happened. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And if you like this video, make sure you click that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.